Hi, Mike Brookfield here. Welcome back. This is Etude number 6, Jazz Etude number 6. So this week I wrote some lines on the progression to Lazybird by John Coltrane, another track that's on that Blue Train album. So yeah, it was a fun one to do. It was kind of tricky enough, but I managed to get my fingers around it in time to record this video. It's quite a cool challenge to be able to get it under my fingers in time to be able to play it on the video and then put this out. And you know, I am flying. I'm on the edge a little bit. I'm a little bit in the red when I'm playing these things, but actually I keep playing them for a few more weeks, and you know, they become more and more kind of fluent over time. So some of the etudes that are maybe like from week 2 or 3, I can play at a faster tempo now, and are kind of starting to settle into the fingers, and that's where the benefits really kind of kick in. So thanks for hanging out with me on these jazz etudes. I hope you're enjoying it. I wouldn't consider them lessons in any way, so please don't confuse them with a lesson. It's really me just kind of documenting what I'm up to alongside, you know, I write songs and I write compositions, and I'd be involved in a few different creative projects, and this is just one of the things I do to try and build my chops, especially after a year away. When I was doing the masters, I wasn't really playing guitar at all, so it's nice to kind of be doing these exercises and feel like I'm getting stronger and building technique and stuff. So yeah, so Lazybird is a good one to check out. It's a kind of cool tune, and the progression's really interesting. I did a little analysis video at the end of this one as well. I'm keeping the format the same in that I'm going to chat, play the etude, the credits roll, but after the credits there, I recorded audio with me going through the chart for the first 8 bars. I figured that would be enough. The reason I haven't put it in the bulk of the video, like at the front of the video, if you like, is that it's pretty boring. You know, if you're a casual watcher, you know what I mean. If I like the idea of anybody being able to kind of watch these videos just to see what different musicians would do when they're practicing different things. So I think you can kind of watch me chat for 5 minutes, listen to the etude, and then sign out. But if you want to hang on and listen to some of the analysis, please do. Now you do need knowledge of intervals and things like that to kind of make sense of it. That's why I'm saying, you know, these things aren't kind of lessons. So, but I've kind of put it out there for the curious and maybe students who have a good idea of how notes work with chords and chord scales and things like that. So you're probably thinking, why am I doing it on the Strat as well? This is what I call the Julie Potter Strat, because an artist friend of ours, Julie Potter, painted it, and it's a Partcaster, but it's become my main Strat over the years after owning lots of different Strats, from 1963 Strats to, you know, James Tyler Super Strats, and I basically modeled this on a James Tyler Strat that I had, and it worked out so well. I didn't really need to keep the Tylers, you know, but as much as brilliant as they are, you know. And the 63 Strat was kind of cool, but hey, so much money wrapped up in those things, you know, do you really need it? And I found out that I didn't really need it, to be honest, you know. So yeah, so why am I using this one? Well, the Telecaster, you know, is white. A bit boring, I think, as a colour. So I've given it to Julie, and she's going to paint it. So that's going to be interesting, seeing that come back. Okay. I can hear the kids fighting out there. I better go and find out what's going on. And check out the etude and the analysis if you're into it. See you on the next one. Keep it burning. folks, so welcome to the analysis section here. So like I said in the intro to the video, this isn't really a lesson, it's just a video which provides some information into the background thinking of what's going on when I'm writing these etudes. It's definitely not for a beginner, because when I'm talking about the analysis, there's quite a lot to take into account. I'm going to shift this red box around so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's kind of kick off. I'm going to really just go through maybe the first 8 bars. And you can see the chord progression is like a 2-5, 2-5. And then you've got this kind of like this minor progression here, which is very, very common, where you've got a minor to a minor with a major 7, minor 7, and then a dominant chord. So like these kind of progressions, like the Coltrane progressions from this era, they're using pretty much standard jazz devices, but they're moving around very, very quickly. You know, so it's not easy to navigate at these speeds, hence why I'm writing etudes around them. And even though they sound kind of, to some people they sound quite you know, full on and busy, they are fun to practice, because they're kind of intense, and it makes you kind of feel good, like you're putting in some energy into your practice, and then when you go away and write a 3-note tune, you don't feel so bad about not moving your fingers that much. Anyway, let's crack into this. So we've got an A minor 7, and all the notes are related to the chord. So these numbers at the above are the guitar fingerings. So you can see here we're kicking off on the offbeat of 1, and it's an E. Now an E in relation to A minor is the 5th, and then we go to an F sharp to a G. So this is a passing tone going between the 5th and the flat 7 of A minor 7. So again, now you can see that it's got pretty complicated straight away if you're not familiar with the intervals and the relationship to chords, and how chords and scales are constructed out of chord tones and tension. So, you know, if I was to go into that, it would take hours and hours, and we'd never get through this. So like I said, you know, this is not really a lesson, it's just some background information, and if you can follow it, that's kind of great. So you can see in that first half of the bar there, really I'm just doing a passing tone between 2 chord tones, and there's a tension in the middle, and that would be a natural 6, which kind of implies the Dorian scale and the 2 chord. This is a 2-5-1 style chord progression. So on a 2 you would use a Dorian, and on the 5 you would use a Mixolydian or an altered scale. There's quite a lot of choices actually of scales you can use. Okay, let's go to the next part of the bar. So we can see here we've got a D, and a D in relation to D is the root. Then we're going from a B to a C. Now this B is approaching the C, and the C is the flat 7 of D7. So this D is a chord tone, this C is a chord tone, it's the flat 7, and this 6th here is just approaching the flat 7. And then it goes down to an A, which is the 5th of D. So in that half of the bar there, you've got 3 chord tones. Chord tones are roots, thirds, fifths, and 7ths. And then in between them, you have your tensions, your 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths, or seconds, fourths, and 6ths, if you want to call them that. I don't get too fussy about whether you're going to call a note a second or a 9th or a 4th or 11th or a 3rd, a 6th, a 13th. You know, I think it's, you know, generally you call it by the higher name if the 7th is present in the chord, and generally in jazz it is most of the time. So you'll hear me refer to things as 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths mostly. So you've got the root, the 6th going up to the flat 7 down to the 5th. Now, so there's nothing too complicated going on there, you know, it's outlining the changes. In this bar here, now we've got a G in relation to C minor is the 5th, and then it's coming down to the flattened 3rd of C. So they're 2 chord tones, so that could be considered a passing tone using the 11th or the 4th. And then up to a flat 7, the flat 7 of C minor. So again, you've got 3 chord tones and 1 tension. So you're really trying to outline the sound of the chord there. Go on to this next section here. I do get a little bit more out there, as you can see, with the more accidentals popping up down there. So then we've got an A in relation to F, that's the 3rd, going up to the 5th, the C is the 5th of F, and then you've got a passing tone from the 5th up to the flat 7. So again, you've got 3 chord tones and 1 tension. So I'm outlining the changes with the chord tones and added in tensions as passing tones or approach notes. That's kind of like an approach note, because it's not passing between these 2 notes, it's kind of approaching from below. So let's go into this next little block here. So an F in relation to F is the root, and this is a passing tone up to the flattened 3rd and then down to the flattened 7th of F minor. So again, 3 chord tones, 1 passing tone. Here we have a minor major 7. So that's basically you know, a minor chord which has a flattened 3rd, but it doesn't have a flat 7 like most minors would normally, you'd assume. So it has an E natural, which is the major 7, going up to the F, which is the root. So the major 7 is approaching the root, and then we're going down to C, which is the 5th, and an A flat, which is the flattened 3rd. So that's pretty much all chord tones in relation to the chord. So major 7, root, 5th, flattened 3rd. So now F minor 7, we have the G, which is like the 9th coming down to the root, or the 2 coming down to the root. And then you've got a C, which is the 5th, jumping up to the flat 7 of F. So again, there's 3 chord tones and 1 tension at the beginning. This is the 9th, the 2nd, and the rest are chord tones. So when you use a lot of chord tones, it's obviously going to outline the sound of the chord. If you use more tensions, it's going to imply other musical, it's going to have other musical consequences. So here we go. We've got the D in relation to B flat, and that's the 3rd. This is the 5th in relation to B flat. The flat 7, A flat, is the flat 7 in relation to B flat, and then this is the 9th, or the 2nd, in relation to B flat. So 3 chord tones, 1 tension. So you can see that, you know, there's a pattern here, and then this bar here, D in relation to E flat major 7 is the 7th, and then we're going down to this. We're going down to the C, which is the 6th, the flat 6 down to the 5th. So this little chromatic passage here is something that's very common in bebop. When you do bebop scales, in order to make bebop, in order to make regular scales kind of fit into a bar line, kind of into a bar mathematically, it's much better if they have 8 notes. Now regular scales only have 7 notes, so bebop has added in a note into the scale, and then they found that the chord tones just fell more naturally on the beat. So what they did is they added a note on major chords between the 6th and the 5th, and this is kind of an example of use of a bebop scale. So you go in the 7, the 6, and then you flatten in the 6th to the 5th. So that helps the notes fit into the bar. And then you're up to, in that example there, you've actually got the flat 6 on a kind of like a strong beat, the 2. So it doesn't exactly kind of fit into that mathematical way of approaching bebop exactly, because you would want maybe a chord tone on the strong beat there, and that's like a chromatic passing note into the flat 7. So just worth pointing that out if you're still following me there. So then we're going up to the F. The F in relation to E flat is the 2nd or the 9th, and then down to the root. So, you know, there's a constant sense of changing direction and playing within a small range. You know, if you look at the range of this solo, up to this point, the lowest note is C, and the highest note is a B natural up here, which is what, like basically 2 octaves, you know. So we're not trying to we're trying to you know, stay within a certain range to kind of explore the different patterns on the guitar and the different areas of the guitar. Instead of just moving around the familiar areas, you're trying to play in positions which you're not necessarily familiar with or as familiar with, you know, because this is just practice. It's just fun. Okay, so we've got a B in relation to A minor 7 here. So that's going to be the 9th of the 2nd, chromatically approaching down to the root and then to the flattened 7th. The G is the flat 7. So you can see that's just a chromatic approach down, and beboppers did that a lot when they started on the 9th as well. They would chromatically go down to the root, and you can see that's making you resolve to a chord tone on a strong beat. Now if we look at this little passage here in relation to D, you've got an E flat in relation to D is like the flat 9, and then a D is the root, and then the C is the flat 7, and then a B flat is the flat 6 or flat 13 or sharp 5, depending on how you want to think about it. So you could see that as kind of like an altered tension on the D7, or you can see that it's actually going to be approaching this B anyway. So there's different ways of analyzing this. When you see that note in relation to that chord, it's an altered kind of tension, like a sharp 5 or a flat 13, same note. But you can also see it's chromatically approaching the B, so it's giving that sense of resolve anyway. And it's moving around so quickly, do you really experience that kind of perceive that tension, or do you perceive the approach more? You probably perceive the approach a little bit more. And now you're on a B in relation to G, that's the 3rd, going up to the 2nd, or going up to the 4th, to the 5th. So that's a passing tone between the 3rd and the 5th. And then you've got an E flat there, which is chromatically approaching back down to the G, because this is all still on the G chord. So you're going the flat 6 down to the 5th, and then you're going back up again, and you can see this is within that bebop ethic that we were talking about a minute ago on the E flat there, where you're adding a note in between the 5th and the 6th. So, and that's helping the chord tones like 5th and a 6th in this instance land on the stronger beats. So here you got the 5th chromatically up to the 6th and then to the major 7. Okay, last bar. I know this is pretty intense maybe for some people, but you know, this is the language of analysis, and if you're not familiar with a lot of these terms, it'd be worth educating yourself or finding someone to tell you in depth about these things. It's not something you just learn off an internet video, though. It takes years of study and years of practicing these things. But you know, I often do this with my students, where we analyze pop charts and then we analyze jazz charts, and we look at the differences, and we see the simplicity of maybe a piano part on a pop song and maybe a Charlie Parker solo or something. It's good fun. Okay, so we've got A flat minor 7, and this is the 5th. This E flat is the 5th of A flat, and then we're going up. The F is the 6th, and then the G flat is the flat 7, and then this would be the major 7 of the G is the major 7 of A flat minor 7, but you could also see it's approaching this note here. So you can see the A flat there, which is the 5th of this chord, or the root of that one. So you can see there's a little chromatic passage there bridging those two little fragments, musical fragments if you like. So you've got the A flat here, which is the 5th of D flat, coming down to the 9th or the 2nd, and to the root, and then to the flat 7. So the thing that you might want to take away from this analysis of the first 8 bars is, the majority of the notes are chord tones, and then I'm putting in some tensions, either using bebop scales, approach notes, or chromatic bridging between two chord tones. So it's that's quite a good example of the simpler elements of writing some of these etudes. And if you're interested in seeing more, maybe please comment, and I'll do some of the more technically challenging excerpts of the etudes, because as they progress, I use more and more altered scales and different techniques. But that's probably a pretty good introduction to how I'm thinking using chord tones and tensions. So have fun. I hope you enjoyed that, and keep it burning.